Hi learners, and welcome to another mini lesson. This time we're learning about the digestive system. We already know that every cell in the body requires nutrients in order to function, and we bring those nutrients into the body through the food we eat, but that food must be broken down in order for us to be able to use it. So the digestive system breaks the food down, and the blood and lymph system transports the food to the cells for us to be able to use it in the form of energy. So let's do a really quick review of the anatomy of the digestive system. You'll get a much more in-depth study of the digestive system in your anatomy and physiology course. So this is just terminology. We do a little bit of anatomy, but not a whole lot. The digestive system is basically one long tube that we call the alimentary canal. And it's a hollow tube that extends from the mouth to the anus with accessory organs along the way that are connected to the length of the tube. And these accessory organs help with the digestion of the food by secreting digestive enzymes to help break down the food. You'll see the term gastrointestinal, abbreviated GI, very frequently throughout this chapter. Technically, it refers to the stomach and intestines, but we use it to mean the whole digestive system. Gastroenterology is the study of the digestive system, and gastroenterologist is a physician who specializes in the digestive system. Let's take a quick look at the parts of the digestive tract here. The alimentary canal includes the mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestines, and the large intestines. The accessory organs include the teeth, the salivary glands, the gallbladder, the tongue, the liver, and the pancreas. We'll talk about the function of each of these in a little more detail in the chapter. But like I said, this isn't an anatomy class, so we're going to focus more on the terminology rather than the actual anatomy and physiology. Okay, so now let's talk about the functions of the digestive system. Your book lists 6 functions, but normally we focus on 5. So the first one is ingestion. Ingestion is basically taking food into the mouth. Basically, that's it. Eating. We take food into the mouth. The second one in your book is propulsion. I don't really consider this a function. It's just kind of how food moves along the track, how the food moves along the alimentary canal. So propulsion is just movement, how the food moves along that tract. It takes about 24 to 36 hours for it to move from mouth to anus. So peristalsis is the name of those waves of contraction that move that food bolus through the alimentary canal, and the bolus is just the mass or the bulk of food that moves in that tube. Deglutition is the medical term that we use for swallowing. So we bring food into the mouth or ingest the food, and deglutition is the word we use for swallowing. And peristalsis is the term for those wave-like contractions that move the food bolus through the digestive tract. Segmental contractions in the small intestine are combined with peristalsis to mash up the food even further, mix it with digestive secretions, and help with the digestive process. Okay, so moving to the next one, digestion. What is digestion? So we've mentioned that word a couple of times already. Digestion is basically breaking food down into simpler forms. We need to break the food down into smaller bits so those smaller bits can be transported and absorbed into the cells, right? We can't just take a cheeseburger and shove it into the cells and then use it for energy, right? That doesn't work. So there's 2 types of digestion. Mechanical digestion simply means that we're breaking the food down from big pieces into smaller pieces, but not altering its chemical composition anyway. And that basically gives the big pieces into small pieces basically gives us a larger surface area for the digestive enzymes to work. Chemical digestion, however, involves breaking down those larger molecules into more simple chemicals. So we're actually changing the chemical composition of what we've taken in. So this is where the digestive enzymes come into play. And those digestive enzymes are produced by a couple different places. The first place we see them are the salivary glands. We also see them in stomach glands, we see them in the intestines, we see them in the pancreas, so a couple different places. And sometimes we call these digestive juices. So there's 3 main groups of digestive enzymes, and you see them listed here. amylases, lipases, and proteases. Amylases are enzymes that break carbohydrates down into simple sugars. Lipases are enzymes that break fats down into fatty acids, and proteases are enzymes that break proteins down into amino acids. So basically, these enzymes break their substances down into their building blocks. Right? So amylases break carbohydrates down into simple sugars, lipases break fats down into fatty acids, and proteases break proteins down into amino acids. Okay, so that's under chemical digestion. All right, so secretion. Secretions, this is another function of the digestive system. Secretions help assist in digestion in a couple different ways. So along the digestive tract, there are secretions that help to liquefy and digest the food. So mucus is secreted along the digestive tract to help lubricate the food and to help it pass along the digestive tract more easily. Water is secreted along the digestive tract to help liquefy the food and make it easier to digest. And as we just talked about in chemical digestion, the digestive enzymes are secreted to help us digest food. So secretion is an important function of the digestive tract. The next one on the list is absorption. So we've got all this digestion going on, secretion, digestion, ingestion. We've got all this stuff going on inside the digestive tract, but we need to get it from inside the digestive tract out into the bloodstream. So absorption is the movement of nutrients from inside the digestive tract across the walls of the digestive tract and out into the blood or the lymph system so it can be transported to the cells of the body. And then the cells can use all that good stuff for energy. So the food we take in is broken down, and then the energy that it's released is moved from inside the digestive tract into the cells through the process of absorption. All right? And then finally, elimination. Whatever is not needed by the body is eliminated as waste. So elimination is the process where anything that's not needed or utilized is removed or eliminated as waste. And that's it. That's the functions of the digestive system. Okay, so this slide is giving you an overview of where the digestive system organs lay in relation to one another. So you can do a quick overview of your anatomy here. And remember, it's a terminology course, so we can't get away from looking at the terms. And remember, if you don't know what the terms are, you can go back to their root elements and remember their word parts. So in these words, look at the roots. The first one is amylase. Amyl is the root word meaning starch, and ase, all of those enzyme words ended in ase, A-S-E, so that meant that it was an enzyme. Deglutition, that was our word for swallow, so deglut is the root word meaning to swallow. Elimination, the root word is elimin, and that means to throw away. And peristalsis, stalsis means to constrict, and the prefix there, peri, means around, so peristalsis, to constrict around. The next slide is looking for some more elements here. Bari is the root word meaning weight. So you may have heard of bariatric surgery. So I think that was the case study in the chapter this week. Digest means to break down. Laparo, there's a couple of terms in the chapter with the term laparo. That means abdomen. And lymph comes from the Greek word meaning lymph. So there you go, it means lymph. Okay, let's look at some disorders, some overall digestive system disorders. These disorders affect the entire GI system and not one specific structure or organ. As you go through the chapter, you'll see we'll focus on more specific disorders as they arise. The first two are often mistaken for one another, but they are actually very different. So the first one is food intolerances. And food intolerances cause overall symptoms. They cause symptoms like bloating, cramps, gas, heartburn, diarrhea, and some more non-specific symptoms like irritability or headaches. And food intolerance arises from the inability to digest certain foods. So things like lactose intolerance or gluten intolerance, those are examples of food intolerances. Food allergies are different. These are caused by an immune system reaction that occurs in response to eating certain foods. So food allergies these are caused by trigger foods, and these can cause mild symptoms or very severe symptoms, sometimes even fatal symptoms or fatal reactions. So these reactions can be GI symptoms like vomiting or stomach cramps, or they can be more severe, life-threatening, things like difficulty breathing, tongue and throat swelling, or something simple like itching. So it can really run the spectrum of symptoms with a food allergy. And interestingly enough, there's 8 types of food that account for 90% of all allergic reactions. And those are eggs, milk, peanuts, tree nuts, fish, shellfish, and soy. So there's skin tests and blood tests that can indicate whether the food-specific immunoglobulin E antibodies are present, and management of the allergies include avoiding eating or being near these trigger foods. So if you have food allergies, you'll know what to avoid and are very cautious about reading labels. Irritable bowel syndrome is abbreviated IBS. This is a symptom-based diagnosis, and it includes a syndrome of chronic abdominal pain or discomfort, bloating. It can include either diarrhea or constipation, so one or the other, doesn't have to be exclusive. And there's no known cause for IBS, and routine testing shows no abnormality. There's no x-ray or test that can show a diagnosis for IBS. So it's based on the symptoms that the patient reports. So the diet, the treatment includes adjusting the diet, the fiber intake, psychological management like reducing stress, increasing exercise, fluids, things like that. And it's a chronic condition, so it needs to be managed long term. Sometimes it's known as spastic colon or irritable colon, sometimes mucus colitis or spastic colitis are other names you may hear for it. Inflammatory bowel disease is abbreviated IBD. We're going to talk about it a little bit later in this chapter. It involves a chronic inflammation of all or part of the lower digestive tract, usually includes conditions like ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. Like I said, we'll talk about it later when we get to that part of the digestive tract. And your book mentions aging. Aging has an effect on every system of the body, less so on the digestive system than other organs, but basically it slows down digestion in the small intestine as well as the large intestine. So lactase levels decrease, and it can cause intolerance to dairy products, or what we call lactose intolerance. And the large intestine, like I said, it slows down, which means peristalsis is decreased, which can lead to constipation. So that's just a normal aging process. All right, so let's talk about gastrointestinal bleeding or GI bleeding. So there's a couple of different forms here, as you can see by the slide. So bleeding can occur anywhere in the GI tract and for a variety of reasons. Someone may have internal bleeding and it can be completely painless in such a small amount that it can go on for months and they may not even be aware of it, or it can be acute and very traumatic and can be life-threatening. So there's a whole spectrum of bleeding that can occur. And it can present in different ways, which can provide a clue as far as what's going on, that the healthcare providers can determine what's going on. So the first one is hematemesis, or it's sometimes pronounced hematoemesis. And this is where the person is vomiting bright red blood. If you break that word down, the last part, emesis, means vomiting, and the first part, hemat, means blood. So this indicates acute bleeding somewhere in the upper GI tract. So if the blood is bright red, it's new and it's coming from somewhere in the upper portion of the GI tract. So think esophagus or stomach or the first part of the small intestines, which is called the duodenum. The next one is vomiting of coffee grounds. It sounds weird, but the person is not actually vomiting coffee grounds, but what appears to look like coffee grounds. And this is blood that's been partially digested. It occurs when blood has passed through the stomach and it looks like actual coffee grounds in the vomitus. So the blood has been acted on by gastric juice or digestive enzymes. So things like gastric ulcers, cirrhosis, esophageal varices, anywhere where the blood has been sitting in the stomach for a while and partially digested or coagulated looks like coffee ground emesis. Hematochezia is the passage of bright red bloody stools, and sometimes you may see the abbreviation BRBPR, which means bright red blood per rectum, and that's exactly what it sounds like. It's passing bright red bloody stools or blood clots from the rectum, and this obviously indicates a lower GI bleed or passing blood from the lower large intestines, the sigmoid colon, the rectum, or the anus. So the bleeding is much further down the GI tract and has not had time to pass through or be digested. Melena is the term we give to the passage of black tarry stools, and this usually indicates an upper GI bleed, and in this case the blood has been digested, so the hemoglobin has oxidized or turned black. So as it passes through the intestine, it gets digested and it changes appearance, so it turns black in color. So instead of passing bright red stools like someone with hematochezia, if the bleeding is further up in the GI tract, somebody with melena will pass dark tarry stools because the blood is being acted on by those digestive enzymes and the stool passes through the intestine. And the melena can last for several days after someone has a severe hemorrhage. The term occult blood, occult means hidden. So there's no obvious bleeding seen in the stool, but we use a test called a Hemoccult test, which uses a chemical agent to check for microscopic traces of blood. It's a simple bedside test that we look for the smallest traces of blood that can indicate GI bleeding. It's not obvious to the naked eye. However, there are certain foods and medications that can cause false positives on this test. Things like black licorice, Pepto-Bismol, iron tablets, even blueberries can cause false positives. Okay, so I think that's it for this mini lesson. Next video, we're going to start on specific structures, and each structure we're going to look at a little bit of the A&P and disorders. So we will start that with the next video. Thanks for your attention.